In Matthew chapter 13, verse 18, hear you therefore the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and understand it not, then comes the wicked one and catches away that which was sown in his heart. This is he which receives seed by the wayside. But he that received the seed into stony places, the same is he that hears the word, and immediately with joy receives it. Yet has he not root in himself, but does for a while. For when tribulation or persecution arises because of the word, by and by he is offended. He also that receives seed among the thorns is he that hears the word, and the care of the world and deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he becomes unfruitful. But he that receives seed into the good ground is he that hears the word and understands it, which also bears fruit, and brings forth some 100, some 60, and some 30. It's been said that we think 4 to 5 times faster than we talk. This means that if a speaker talks 120 words a minute, the audience thinks at about 500 words a minute. In James 1, verse 19, my dear brothers, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. There's a story that's told of Napoleon when he was making plans to invade England. He was told that an American wanted to see him. I can give him 2 minutes, Napoleon said. But 2 minutes was not long enough to understand the revolutionary idea of a ship propelled by steam. Had Napoleon listened longer to Robert Fulton, the history of the world might have been altered. It pays to listen to the right person at the right time and for the right length of time. After Yeshua was transfigured on the mountain, Yahweh said in Matthew 17, verse 5, while he yet spake, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and behold, a voice out of the cloud, which said, this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear you him. An 80-year-old grandfather went to his daughter's house for dinner. And when the meal was over, he announced that he was going to take a walk through the neighborhood. He said, I'll be back in 20 minutes. But 2 hours had passed before he finally returned. Sorry I'm late, he said, but I stopped to talk to an old friend, and he just wouldn't stop listening. Sometimes it pays to listen a very long time, especially when it comes to listening to Yahweh in his word. We should never stop listening to the word of Yahweh. It pays big dividends to listen to Yahweh and Yeshua and learn from him, whether through a sermon or through your own personal readings of Yahweh's word. In our text about the parable of the sower, Yeshua speaks of 4 different kinds of hearers or listeners. The hard-hearted listener, the shallow-hearted listener, the clutter-hearted listener, and the good-hearted listener. So the hard-hearted listener in 13 verse 19, when anyone hears the word of the kingdom and understands it not, then comes the wicked one and catches away that which is sown in his heart. This is he which received seed by the wayside. The hard-hearted listener is hardened by the gospel because they can't seem to understand it or grasp it. Satan snatches any little bit that was sown in that person's heart before it can start to grow and bear fruit. At one point during the game, the baseball coach said to one of the young players, "Do you understand what cooperation is? What a team is?" And the little boy nodded yes. "Do you understand what matters is whether we win together as a team?" Little boy nodded yes. So the coach continued, "When a strike is called, or you're out at first, you don't argue or cuss or attack the umpire. Do you understand all of that?" Again, the little boy said yes. "Good," said the coach. "Now go over there and explain that to your mother." There are some things that some people just don't seem to understand in life. However, understanding all about baseball is not nearly as important as understanding the basics or the essentials of the gospel. Just like three boys talked about their fathers, one said, "My father is a great professor." And when he's talking about a subject, only 10 people in the whole world can understand him. The second boy said, "My father is a great brain surgeon. And when he's talking about surgery, only 5 people in the whole world can understand what he's saying." The third boy says, "My father is a preacher. And when he's preaching, nobody can understand what he's saying." Colossians 4, verse 3. "Withal praying also for us, that Yahweh would open unto us a door of utterance, to speak the mysteries of Messiah, for which I am also in bonds, that I may make it manifest as I ought to speak." In order to keep Satan from stealing what has been sown in people's hearts and minds, we must make the message of Yeshua Messiah as clear as possible. Matthew 13, verse 20. "And he that received the seed into stony places, the same as he that hears the word and immediately with joy receives it. Yet has he not root in himself, but endures for a while. For when tribulation or persecution arises because of the word, by and by he is offended." The shallow-hearted listener doesn't have any staying power. They're quick to believe and receive and rejoice, but they don't stay with the program or the person of Yeshua Messiah. I've known a number of people who started a jogging or exercise program because it seemed so beneficial. But after only a short time, they quit. The excitement wore off. The going got tough. We experienced sore muscles or leg aches. And what people have done with various sports, they have also done with jobs. And they have done also with Yeshua and his church. Why don't they stick with it? Is it their fault or ours? Part of the fault could be ours. It all depends on how much we help new converts, how much we love them and support them. That's it. That's the key to the survival of all believers. We must love them, and even in their failures, we must support them, encourage them, help them, and pray for them. In 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 14, "Now we exhort you, brethren, warn them that are unruly, comfort the feeble-minded, support the weak, be patient towards all men." Romans 14, verse 1, "Him that is weak in the faith receive you, but not to doubtful disputations." Romans 15:1, "When we that are strong ought to bear the infirmities of the weak, and not to please ourselves. Let every one of us please his neighbor for his good to edification." I've heard it said that the believers are the only people who shoot their wounded. I wouldn't say that it's always the case, but it does part of the time. In other words, when someone fails or sins, what do? Do we shoot them or do we try to save them? Do we criticize and condemn them or do we try to help cure their problem? I realize that you can't help some people because they don't want to be helped. I've seen those kind of people in churches. And generally, after a period of time, they will drop out. Seems like no one can help them but Elohim. Consequently, some will not remain faithful. When the going gets tough, they get going in the wrong direction. Whether they find life tough, for the believer's life tough, they just drop out. Such is the shallow-hearted listener. Matthew 13:22, and he also that receives seed among the thorns is he that hears the word, and the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he becomes unfruitful. The clutter-hearted listener has cluttered up his life with things of this world. Some people are caught up in the world of entertainment, which keeps them from being captured by the Lord. Did you know Americans have about $2.9 billion in overseas missions? Sounds pretty good until you hear the rest of the story. Americans also gave $8.4 billion to see movies, $13 billion to chocolate, $23 billion to buy toys, $23 billion to buy stuff for their pets, $24 billion for jewelry, $58 billion for soft drinks, $85 billion for lawn and garden care, and $354 billion to eat out in restaurants. Does that sound like Americans are interested in Yahweh and Yeshua? I'm not trying to point the finger at us. I'm pointing the finger at Americans. The vast majority of Americans are not interested in Yahweh. They are interested in anything and everything else. They have no spiritual priorities. The vast majority of people in America may talk a bit about Christianity, but they don't practice it. Ask the average person what they're interested in and see what they say. They don't talk about Yahweh and Yeshua. They talk about sports, movies, food, hobbies, cars. This is the problem with the affluent American. We have everything. We do everything or want to do everything, and consequently, Yahweh and Yeshua are left out of the picture of our lives. American lives are cluttered with things, and we have no room for Yeshua Messiah. Matthew 13:23, but he that receives seed into the good ground is he that hears the word and understands it, which also bears fruit, and brings forth some 100, some 60, some 30. The good-hearted listener hears the word and understands it and bears fruit. It has been said that the gauge of a good sermon is when a person leaves church not saying, "What a good sermon," but "I will do something." That's a good sermon. In James 1:22, be you doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving your own selves. Be you doers of the word. In James 1:23, for if any be a hearer of the word, and not a doer, he is like unto a man holding his natural face in a glass, beholding his natural face in a glass, for he beholds himself, he goes his way, and straightway he forgets what manner of man he was. But whoso looks into the perfect law of liberty, and continues therein, he being not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this man shall be blessed in his deed. A good-hearted listener sees himself in the mirror of Yahweh's word and doesn't like what he sees. Consequently, he does something to change that image. He believes and obeys the word of Yahweh. He allows Yahweh's word to bear fruit in his life. The good-hearted listener listens, and understands, and he bears fruit. Yeshua said in Revelation 3:20, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in to him and will sup with him, and he with me." Are you listening? Yeshua's knocking on the door of our heart. He's knocking in many ways and by means of many people. Do you hear him? Are you listening? He's not saying let's do lunch. He's saying let's do life together. Are you listening? Yahweh bless.